Hi everyone, Brian Parker again, and I'm going to do a quick weekly update. By quick, I mean I always talk a lot. And I want to clarify a couple things and just let you know what I'm doing next. So first thing I want to clarify is, it's been pointed out to me, I keep on referring to in the last video I did and the previous ones about communications that occurred between Liz and I and the governing board. And it's been pointed out to me that it's actually wasn't the full governing board, and I apologize for that. I keep forgetting that when the response was sent back to us, the content of there was an email, short email, that acknowledged that the letter that was an attached document that I keep on opening, excuse me, was actually drafted by the vice chair of the governing board, SJ, and the clerk of the governing board, Reverend Onetta Brooks, who was addressing it as both the clerk and the chair of the governance committee and the liaison between the moderators, nominating committee, and the governing board, and Reverend Elder Nancy Wilson. So the letter that I kept on referencing in the past, when I kept on saying the governing board said this and the governing board said that, technically was from the moderator and 2 members of the governing board, and it was not drafted by or did it come from the full governing board itself, although it came from the representatives and they were copied on it. So just want to clarify that. The second thing I want to clarify is on meeting minutes, and something that I had pointed out. I pointed in, which was part of the original question that we had asked about the participation, the involvement of our sitting elders into this whole process. And as I've pointed out before, we were kind of giving a non-answer that they really didn't have any participation in it. We pointed out that the February 2014 minutes showed that process documents were sent to them for feedback. And last video I was pretty adamant that I thought that was a conflict of interest, and perhaps harsh to say that it was unfortunate that our governance chair could not recognize that conflict. What we don't have is the March 2014 minutes, the meeting that followed that, which was a face-to-face meeting, joint session with the senior leadership team. It's a 2-day meeting that takes place in St. Petersburg, Florida. I did request those meeting minutes from the clerk at the time, and what is noted in there, let me just read that to you. Onetta reviewed the feedback on the moderator's nominating search process document. The July 16th date was removed and clarified that the MNC's work ends with General Conference. They expanded the confidentiality around personal data. She will circulate the updated draft with the governing board and council of elders. Nancy shared, this is important, Nancy shared that she surveyed the council for potential applicants for moderator, and none of them indicated that they were in discernment about that. Therefore, none will be excluded from receiving the process documents. So, I was not aware of that because the meeting minutes are not posted. Now that I have them, and hopefully they'll be posted so everybody else could have them, it was clarified by Nancy that she surveyed the Council of Elders for potential applicants to moderator, and none of them said they were in discernment about that. Therefore, they thought it was perfectly appropriate to have them participate in all the process documents. So that was in March of 2014. And I'll just do a quick rundown of what we know then. So February of 2014, the governance chair said she wants to send the process documents to the senior leadership team, Council of Elders. The March meeting, joint session meeting, Nancy indicates that she surveyed them. None of them were in discernment about becoming moderator. Therefore, none of them recused themselves from this process. Therefore, it seemed appropriate to share all those documents with them. Then in April of 2014, our governance chair clarified that sitting elders could run for the moderator position. Not sure why that clarification needed to happen in 2014 if none of them were in discernment. In April of 2014, that's when the clarification happened. We read through the minutes, August through November, there was really not much in the meeting minutes updating the MNC process. In December of 2014, again, feedback was requested and criteria sent to the senior leadership team, Council of Elders. There were some documents posted in a shared Google Drive for them to, I think, review as well. So February, March, they're not going to do it. April, there's a clarification they could run. We still have them participating in December of 2014. The next meeting minutes that show some sort of announcement about the process is in 2015, February 2015. There's a timeline adjustment. It says the timeline adjustment will be shared with all non-recused GB members. I assume that it was shared with maybe everybody else too. So we have our non-recused GB members not participating in any of this. In March, face-to-face meeting, the chair of the MNC gave an update. I don't think it was in person, I think virtual, but gave an update. Robert excuses himself, as the minutes say. That same meeting, our elders are present. So again, we got a whole year that has transpired of participation of some sort where it appears that they're still not in discernment. And then in May of 2015, the MNC invited nominees to apply. So we have to assume that sometime between February 2014 and May of 2015, that discernment process was telling them they weren't going to apply, and then after that in May, they did apply and were part of it. We asked a simple question: what was their involvement? It appears that it was probably at least a year's worth of involvement in some level or another, without recusing themselves of the process. So just wanted to run that down with the list of what I can discern from the meeting minutes. And as you, last update, as you know, a letter went out from the moderator and the governing board, or maybe you don't know, I'll link it here. In the spirit of full transparency, they address some of the things that have been brought up recently, and also made the announcement that a third of the governing board has or will be resigning their position. Not because of any wrongdoing on their parts. It just sounds like from the letter and from what I understand, because these folks have had enough of the conflicts that are taking place and met their threshold and made the tough decision that they would no longer be part of the governing board. The letter that went out also says that in the spirit of full disclosure, we want you to know that a governing board motion to reject the slate of nominees that the MNC brought forward failed. So that happened in the last few weeks. It goes on to say, however, we approved a subsequent motion to review the process and concerns that have surfaced. So that's a step in the right direction. Not sure what's going to happen with that. They are also working with a consultant and outside team of reviewing the governing board's role. And while this happens, they've asked the MNC to delay the next step in their process, which is a webinar to meet the candidates. So that's now scheduled for March 16th. It's been postponed a couple weeks. The governing board says that while they work through their concerns and issues, they will publicly summarize and share their findings. So in that spirit, this will be the last video that I do. I'll wait for their summary and findings. May or may not have anything to say on it at that point. And we'll otherwise just maybe use social media to highlight it so that you can make your own judgments and discussions about whatever they summarize as part of their findings. One last thing that I do want to address, though, because I realized probably we're that target what they were addressing here. You know, in the letter that went out, they said, we respectfully decline as the governing board to respond or conduct our business on social media. We hope you understand that and bless us for it, just as you would expect from your local church board. And that if we want to have any questions for the governing board, to contact them directly at their email address, governingboard@mccchurch.net. So I think I know why that line was put in the letter, and I certainly was not asking them to conduct their business on social media. Respond to social media, sure. I think it's important. And let me point out what I think is a stark contrast between the governing board of a global denomination and that of a local church board. A local church board could get the pulse and the of their congregation and of their constituents during fellowship after Sunday service, throughout the week with the activities that are transpiring at the church, or because concerned individuals may show up to their board meeting. You know, they know that it's the first Wednesday of every month, so they come and observe and participate. The same doesn't hold true for a global board, for a global denomination. So again, I'm nitpicking here, and I know that. But we are 16 years into the 21st century, and it would behoove the governing board to respond to social media. Quite frankly, you have. And not only to respond, but to harness social media to understand its power for change and its power for communication, and to understand that we are entering into, and have been for a very long time, quite frankly, a new time where social media plays an enormous role in creating and demanding transparency amongst our leaders of all organizations. We see it in the corporate world, we see it in the private sector, we see it in charitable organizations, we see it across the board, that it is through social media that people will demand transparency. So, I don't know, maybe there's a little campaign soundbite there for candidates for governing board and moderator to comment on as they go into general conference, how they would use social media and how they would use it to gather and respond to the information and the concerns of their constituents. So I'll leave it at that. And the last thing that I will actually say is I want to personally thank those governing board members who served and have made the very tough decision, and quite frankly took a stand. And I know it came at a great personal cost to them to say enough and distance themselves from the problems that are occurring. So I thank all of you for your service, for enduring as much as you could and going through as much as you could. And you will be missed on the governing board. I'm sure your insight and your wisdom will be missed on the governing board. And I pray that that you have peace in your decision, which I'm sure you do. And I pray for the remaining members of the governing board that they find a great deal of insight and understanding of why you did what you did, needing to resign, and that in the interim between now and general conference, that those that they appoint to the governing board could possibly fill your shoes and come at the board with the same level of integrity and demand the same level of integrity that all of you have. So with that, I thank you, and I'm going to take a break. You probably won't hear from me until we hear back from the governing board on the summary of their review of this process. So with that, thanks everyone, and have a great Easter.